Hello, today I'm going to be working through a solution to the Guess a Number Lab. I like to do this in class because then we can go nice and slow and make sure everyone's on the same page. But remember, this is a YouTube video, so you can pause it, rewind it very easily. I recommend you do that if you have some mistakes. You should also test your code frequently. This is one of the bigger programs, probably the biggest program that we're going to write in this class, so testing it makes sense. Testing it frequently. So do that and go ahead and hit pause and make sure it's working the way it should. I really like this activity because it's a game that we're all familiar with, and it's pretty simple, but it also involves many more complexities than what you would think. So I'm going to stop talking about it and I'm going to start doing it. So here we go. I'm creating a new file. You should see the instructions. There's a PDF. I wrote this up in phases, and so while this is going to cause us some headaches writing it in chunks like this, it's not the most logical way to write the program, but I tried to make it in just chunks that you could test out. Trust me, I could do a better job of being an architect on this and create it all at once, and it'd be less work, but instead I'm kind of going like just one small piece at a time, and then we're going to end up sticking it all together, and so we'll see how that goes. Alright, so there's a lot of stuff going on here. First thing we want to do is generate a random number between 1 and 100. Well, you got to import random for that to happen. And then let's create this random number. Come up with a variable name to represent your random number that you're going to be trying to guess. I'm going to call mine target. You should call yours something else. So it's random dot next int. It's between 1 and 100, I think. I can't see because it's behind my thing. Oh gosh, there we go. Now, I don't know if that worked, so I'm going to print it out. I just want to make sure I'm actually getting a random number. That's what you call debugging. Oh, it's randint. It's a classic mistake. In many languages, they'll call it nextint, but it's randint. All right, so I'm getting a random number. That's what you call debugging, right? A statement which prints something out, which displays that your program is working the way that you hope it does. All right, that was step 1. Got my target. Next thing I want to do is get the guess from the user. So come up with a variable to represent the user's guess. I'm going to call it guess because I don't know what else I would call it. Input. Guess the number. You can write something else if you want. All right. Now I need to validate the number. Make sure it's a number. So that's going to be an if guess.isNumeric is equal to true. So isNumeric is something we talked about in the lecture. It's a function which returns true if the string that you're calling it from is composed entirely of numbers. And so it'll return true or false, and this is a good time for a debugging statement, so I'll say yes. Alright, I'm going to get rid of that, but for now I just want to make sure it's working right. So I put in df, and I get nothing. I guess that seems right. Put in 56, I get yes. Okay, good. So you notice how I did that, then I made sure it worked. Did this, there was nothing really to test. I did this, there was something to test. So now I want to repeat the process until a valid input is entered. So I need to have a no here. The no is going to be my else, and that's going to be like print enter in I don't know, a number. I don't know. See, that's the thing. We could validate this a lot. Nobody wants to play a guessing game where you have like fractions or repeating decimals, so this really should be an integer, I think. So I could check to make sure this is a whole number, make sure it's positive, make sure it's less than a zillion or something like that, but I don't really care. If you want to do terrible guesses, you can knock yourself out doing terrible guesses. That's just where I'm at on this. If you want to do a better job with it, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just know this is going to be a stretch for some people anyway, so I'm not trying to make it any more complicated than it needs to be. So that's appropriate. This is not appropriate. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say I don't want to print out yes, because that doesn't do anything. See this whole like convert the input into an integer after it's been determined to be valid? I'm going to do that here. So I'm going to say guess equals int guess. So this is where things... So you need to make this input, which is a string, into an integer or a float. But that's where the program will crash. So I'm only going to perform that conversion if it is a numeric value. And there will not be a... I'm not going to do a print here. It doesn't make sense. And then repeat the process. So that means just take this thing here. Well, actually, this whole dang thing here. And wrap it in a loop. So I guess we'll do... well... I was thinking of just wrapping this in a loop. I trust me. There's ideas going through my head right now, and I'm thinking, oh, what's the easiest way we could do this? Well, I'm not too worried about the easiest way we can do it. All right, I'm gonna leave that out here, and I'll say while something. How about while? I'll just use a flag. While flag is equal to false. And I'll set that flag to be false right here. So I'm going to ask the user for their input. I'm going to initialize this flag to false. So I'm going to say while flag is false. So we're going to do at least one trip through this loop. And you see how I just put like a while around an if? That means I need to take that whole thing and I need to tab that in because it's now inside of that. And that's where I was saying, like, if I was trying to be smart about this, if I was trying to do this the easiest way, I would have done that loop first because I know that I'm going to repeat this process until I get valid input. But instead, I want to do kind of the easy thing, which is check it and then take all of that and throw that inside of a while. And actually, you know what? So let's just enter a number, and I'm going to take this line here, and I'm going to copy it down in here. So in other words, if what you entered isn't a number, that I'm going to turn this more into a negative message. That was not a number. And then I'm going to ask them to guess again. Right? This is that tax you pay for doing things really simple and then making it more complex later. Better off would have been to realize that this was complex and just write the whole thing together, but if you have that little of indentation, this should work. Let's give it a try. Guess the integer. Got. That was not a number. Guess the integer. Free. That was not a number. Guess the integer. 75. Oh, I died. I didn't expect that. Line 9. If is numeric. Oh, it's because I made it an integer. What the heck? Oh, I have to flip that flag. Okay, so here's the problem. So I correctly converted it to an integer here, but then after this if, it goes up here and it jumps back into the loop, and then I'm trying to do is numeric on an integer. So I need to flip that flag to true. I need to prevent it from entering the loop again because it's entering the loop and it's getting hung up right here because an int doesn't have an isNumeric function. Only a string has that. So garbage. You notice how I test the heck out of my code? You all should be testing the heck out of your code. Now that right there tells me that it made it past that step. So phase 1 is done. So all this was a scheme for determining whether we had a numeric input and it was converting it to an integer and repeating the process until we could get past it. So that was phase 1. All right. I'm sure there's other ways we could have done that. I have no... As you should know at this point, I'm not trying to do everything perfectly. I'm just trying to do it with whatever seems like it's the most logical thing at the time. Phase 2. Write an if statement to display either too high, too low, or correct. All right. So once we're down here at 16, notice I'm not indented because I'm outside of that. I've got an input, I've got an S, a guess. Let's just write an F. So if you want to pause it and try and write this if on your own, I'm going to tell you, as far as if-elses and elifs go, you're never going to do a more straightforward one than right here. So why don't you try and do it on your own and then check back with me. AKA press pause. I guess I'm going to pause it too and just go like cooking show style. And I want to do that. I just kind of want to make you write this. Like you shouldn't just be copying it because I'm doing it. But anyways, I'll do it. All right. So if guess is greater than target. And so if you're a normal student, you're going to struggle with this because you chose different variable names. That needs to be whatever that is, and that needs to be whatever that is, right? I don't know what yours are called. They probably shouldn't be called those things if you came up with your own variable names, which would be good. So if guess is greater than target, then I'm going to print out too high. Right? Pretty straightforward. elif guess is less than target. Like I said, this one's real straightforward. Print too low. And the else is going to be, what am I supposed to say? Correct. All right, so that should work. I mean, it's a weird one. How about this? I like to do this. This is something you should get rid of eventually, but how about let's print out that random number? Because how the heck do you test something if you don't know what the number is? It's cheating. Do remove this later. But for now, it makes the testing easier. So let's see how it works. So the number's 8. I guess 7. It says too low. Okay. The number's 9. Oh, that's crazy. Range. 100. That's too high. 24. Correct. So do you see why I put that print in there? Not because it makes any sense, but because how the heck do you test it out to make sure it's working right? And if you're a normal person, you may have gotten these things backwards, and maybe your high is low and your low is high or something like that. So that was that. Repeat steps 2 through 5 until the number is guessed. What in the world does that mean? I need to rewrite that step. Yeah, I don't know what this means because I need to rewrite it, and I will when you're looking at it. But basically, we need to make them keep guessing until they get it right. And the way this was written, at one point those were steps 2 through 5. So basically, you know this whole validation thing? This whole process, so ask them for a number, figure out if it's a good number, and evaluate it. In other words, my line 6 to line 22, that whole thing needs to be repeated until they get it right. This does not need to be repeated. So let's throw a while on this and just kind of stumble our way through it. So see, that is going to start there. Then I'm going to take literally everything and tab it in. So now that is all inside of my while. Now while, so I'm going to need a conditional statement here. This is going to go through some changes. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a second flag. And I can't call things like flag 1 and flag 2 is kind of, these are kind of horrible names. Usually I don't have 2 flags. So I'll call this one like a result flag, and I'll initialize it to false, and I'll say while. I know you're like, what am I doing? All right, so this thing right here is going to make the game run. Let me put a comment above that because that's actually a good place for a comment. Flag determines whether the game is still going. So we start off false. And then, so this result flag, I'm going to flip it here on correct. So when I find a correct guess, I don't just print out correct. I also result. I also take that flag and I flip it to true, which is going to bust me out of this loop. So that's what that flag's for. Let's see how this works. So it's 32, and I guess 31. That's too low. 33, too high. 32, correct, and it busts me out of the loop. You see how I'm using these flags? I could also be doing breaks, but I'm pretty much just not going to use breaks because I don't need to use breaks. I like flags. I think it's good to learn about flags because you need flags sometimes. Whereas, like, you can use a flag as a break, but flags have more utility than breaks, I would say. Trust me, there's other ways we could do this. All right, so what does that mean? I don't know, but that's what I meant. I don't know. I have to rewrite that. All right, so we've kind of got our thing working the way it should. It's pretty fun. Well, fun, I guess. It's kind of fun. I was playing Guess the Number with my son the other day. He thought it was kind of fun. All right, so now phase 3, I want to keep track of the number of guesses. Increment guesses after each guess. Alter the output from phase 2 to include number of guesses. All right, so we're going to need another variable. It's going to be up in here. So num guesses equals 0 because that's how it starts. And so when do I want to increment it? So here's a while loop. Here's where I get the input. Here's where I validate that the input is good. You know, I guess the truth is we could increment it a lot of places. You could increment it here because this is the point where you've determined that the input was valid. So you could increment it here. You could add 1 to number of guesses right here. If you wanted to put it up here outside of this while loop, but inside of that while loop, so like this is the while loop which just keeps the game going, you could put it here too. The implication of that would be that if the user enters dog or cat, that counts as a guess. So you got to ask yourself, do you want that to count for a guess or don't you want that to count for a guess? I think it should count for a guess. It's just a terrible guess, but I'm going to put it in here because I'm trying to be nice. You see, I just want to punish the user for doing dumb stuff, but, you know, you can do whatever you want. I don't actually care how you handle it. Num guesses equals num guesses plus 1. Right, so I'm going to increment guesses at the point where you did a valid guess. Up here would be, I don't care if it's valid, I'm just going to burn it as a guess. You could also put it down in here. It really doesn't matter. I'm just putting it there. Trust me, there's so many places you could put it. I'm kind of struggling with that. Alter the output to include number of guesses. So that means all right, too high. You have I don't know. That is something guesses. I'll throw a dot format on there and we'll put in num guesses. I'm going to steal that whole line because it's very similar. You should probably write it out, but I'd be lying to you if I told you that that wasn't very similar. And then I'll say it took you guesses. I know, I'll write it out. I'm just showing you, right? One time I copied and pasted, one time I didn't. Notice it didn't take that much longer to write it out. Oh, we just want to put zeros in there. I guess that's nice. Let's give it a try. Guess the integer. 53. And you see guesses doesn't work so good. In the singular case, I don't care. Oh crap. I thought it was 50. I thought 54 was the number. I was like, oh no, my stuff doesn't work. I think we're good, right? So now we're counting guesses. There's no consequences. Phase 4 is the consequences. So set the maximum number of guesses. That's up to you. I'm going to do num guesses. I'm going to do it up here. Max guesses. I don't know. How many do you want? I would say, I think 7 is the correct answer here. I think 7 should work. Truth is, 8 should make it easy. 6 would make it hard. Let's do 6. All right, so I got max guesses. So here's the deal now. So you say I'm counting guesses. That's fine. Max guesses is not going to get incremented. It's just going to be something that we compare against. So this outer loop here, it determines whether the game keeps running or not. I'm telling you that if your num guesses equals your max guesses, then the game's over. So what we're going to do is take this condition, which is still there, and I'm going to say and. So while the flag is false and num guesses is not equal to max guesses. So at the point where they do become equal, you're going to bail out of this loop and lose like that. So that's all that is, but there's some more stuff. So I did that. And so then there's this if there's no, this part I need to deal with later. That will break you out of all the loops. So this right here. So if the maximum number of guesses is exceeded or reached, then I need to display a message. All right, so here's how this works. So let's just say I ran out of guesses and I broke out of this loop. Well, breaking out of the loop really means I'm on line 31 or 32. So I'm going to put an if down here. And I'm going to say if max guesses is equal to num guesses. I don't know if that's what those are called. I think it is what they're called. Which is the kind of the same condition I wrote here. So I'm just going to say, right, like, there's a couple ways you get out of this loop. One way you get out of this loop is by running out of guesses. The other one is by getting it right. So after the loop, I'm going to see how you got to this point. And if you got to this point by losing, I'm going to inform you that you're a loser. I'm just going to steal that message straight up because why not? Well, we'll see how it turns out. All right, you lose. And I also, I'm going to put an exclamation mark. The number was something. Format. And target. Well, let's see how this goes. All right, let's go stubborn mode. I just insist that it's 82. I know it's 82. If I keep guessing, it's going to be 82, right? Too high. All right. I think that's it. And that's the lab. So you might have some other ideas like, oh, can I do it this way? Can I do that way? Can I add this? Can I customize that? The answer is yes. You need to have all these things going on. And you see it's pretty, I get why it's complicated, right? There's multiple flags, nested while loops. There's 3 ifs, right? One of the ifs is nested inside of 2 whiles. But, you know, when you start doing things like, you know, evaluating the input and asking for input repeatedly, and it's all part of a larger loop, which is playing a game which involves repetition, you're going to end up with multiple ifs and loops like that. Trying to think what's the best thing I can do here. I'm trying to just make this big so you can see it. There's my whole code. And you know this thing right here? Yeah, let's get rid of that because that's not fair. And that looks like a guess a number lab to me. And so you could alter this to make the game more difficult or easier. And I'm sure we could have done this without flags, but like I said, I'm not necessarily trying to do things the easiest way I can, just trying to do them a way that'll that makes sense to me when I can talk through it. And this is what I came up with today. So hopefully you had some fun with that. When you're done, go ahead and submit that, and that's the lab for the week, and that is due Sunday at midnight. Not in class because, well, there isn't class this week. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of your week.